What the Jacob is up? I usually say what the fuck is up, but given our guest, I said Jacob. We're on with Mark Whitney. He's a candidate for the Libertarian nomination for president for 2020. Mark, how you doing, bro?
Hey, good, man. Good, Caleb. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that was hey, before we get going, where'd you guys get the title of your show, Bread and Circuses? How'd you come to that?
Now, Caleb actually had came up with the name. We were kind of throwing around names before. We didn't know if we wanted to do something lighthearted or not. But
yeah,
Caleb, where exactly did you get it from? I know it's a saying, but
so I'm a big Patriots fan, and every time I'd post shit on Facebook about the Patriots and NFL, whatever, I had this friend that was super political that would always comment, "Oh, bread and circuses." So that's where it came from.
Oh, so you're in Omaha, but are you from New England, Caleb?
I am not. I actually, as a kid, I was a big fan of Drew Bledsoe.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So and then they stuck, and I was pissed when he got benched, but obviously that worked out for the better. So
he's got a winery now. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's got a winery up in Washington State. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to visit it someday.
yeah, Caleb's still up in Omaha, and I'm down in El Paso, Texas right now. So
right down on the El Paso's way south, right?
Yeah, it's
right down on the border. Yeah,
you can see Ciudad de Juarez, no matter what point of the city you're at. So
right on. Yeah, my arch nemesis, Jacob Hornberger, was born in Laredo. He has a very interesting story he tells where he was born. He was raised Democrat. He read a book, and now he's Libertarian. That's a pretty good story. Very exciting. It's a very complicated story arc.
So that just dives it right in. Why I said the word Jacob in place of fuck. So do you want to explain that to everybody?
Well, people, for those of you that don't follow in politics, which would be 99.9% of it statistically, we Libertarians live in our own little bubble. And so we have this presidential contest going on. The way it works is we travel around to different states and we call each other names. That's if you're doing it. Actually, nobody called each other a name until I showed up. And but I had a little name recognition problem. So we have a guy running for president in our party named Jacob. And he's sort of like, I don't know, to a lot of libertarians, he is sort of like what Obama is to some Democrats. There's sort of a sainthood and aura about him. So I said, well, next time I do an interview, I'm going to call him a motherfucker. well, that solved my name recognition problem. But then the following day, I was set to do a debate in the great state of Florida, and the people that ran the convention there imposed a speech code on me, and they told my campaign manager if I didn't agree not to use certain bad words, they never said what they were, that they would not live stream the debate. So I readily agreed. But then I did the debate under protest, and it was really an interesting night. I know, Caleb, you were saying that you like to produce comedy shows there in Omaha, and I owned a comedy club for 5 years. I've toured one-person shows all over the North American independent theater circuit and the United Kingdom. And you know this from being on your feet, standing alone in front of people, Caleb, with no net, no notes, no place to hide. When you get a big laugh, there's always some people not laughing. Mm-hmm. When I make people cry in the theater, there's always some people not crying. When I get a standing ovation, there's always some people not standing. But on this one night in Florida, I united the entire room for 2 hours against me. They were united against me for 2 hours. And I say that is an achievement in and of itself. It will never happen again. And, people, they were so pissed off at me for challenging them on their decision to censor my political speech in a presidential forum. And the reason that Caleb was making the joke about the word Jacob and fuck was because I was told I couldn't use bad words, and I guess fuck would be on that list. At least according to my Irish Catholic mother, it would be. And according to George Carlin, it is. And according to U.S. Supreme Court, it is. So that's good enough for me. So instead of saying motherfucker, I called him Mother Jacob. And that now is his name. And, you know, the reason the subtext behind that was rather sophisticated. I'm trying to show people that I can do tricks like what Donald Trump can do. Donald Trump became president in large part for his ability to assign nicknames and to brand his opponents. And if you'll recall, Jeb Bush would be on stage next to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump would go, low energy Jeb. And that was like a reveal, right? No one had ever said that about Jeb Bush before. And Jeb Bush shows up at the next debate. He's got a little more energy. And Donald Trump goes, oh, a little more energy today. I like that. And so, Trump is so comfortable on stage, and I'm comfortable on stage the same way. And that has really been off-putting to some libertarians. And ever since Florida, before Florida, I was surging, but nobody knew who I was. After Florida, everybody knew who I was, and I've kind of been one day at a time digging myself out of a hole.
Yeah. See, that's tough. The turning the entire room against you. I managed to do it once when I had first started doing comedy. I did a show on the anniversary of Amy Winehouse's death, and it was like a 5-minute set. And I hopped up by congratulating her on her 7 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a laugh the entire night. So that was, I completely understand. 5 minutes, I can't imagine 2 hours though.
Well, listen, I say to people that this is actually what you want in your first libertarian president. You want your first libertarian president to be able to face down the mob and not be flustered by it. I'll tell you, Caleb and Nick, I slept like a baby that night. It was just Tuesday for me. It's no big deal. I've been through many worse things than that. And but everybody, boy, were people upset. There's still people upset about it. And people say to me, "You're ruining the Libertarian Party brand." I'm like, "What brand? On what electoral success are you saying I'm ruining your brand? You got a 48-year history of not getting people elected." And I am, I've been a CEO of a tech company for 20 years. I sell to a lot of lawyers. I've been in my 20s. I was bankrupt. I lost homes. I lost a chain of Ben & Jerry's stores. I had to spend a little time in federal prison, and that'll make a libertarian out of you right there. I got my sentence declared unconstitutional by Judge Breyer, who's now in the U.S. Supreme Court, and I sued Barack Obama to end the participation of U.S. armed forces in a foreign civil war. I'm hardwired to get up every day and help Mitch McConnell form a wet spot in his pants. That's all I want to do for 4 years, is just do things that piss the guy off. And I just need a few libertarians to get behind me, and the party can begin.
So how would you fuck with Donald Trump and Joe Biden?
Well, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, to start with, you're running against Statler and Waldorf from the Muppet Show, the two old guys who heckle Fozzie Bear. I mean, the so-called mainstream parties are nominating fringe candidates. I mean, Trump is a fringe candidate. The guy is not even, if you get together assemble a room of 1,000 citizens at random, and you say the president of the United States has never read the Bill of Rights, 1,000 people will agree with you. Even Trump's adherents will agree with that. That's outrageous. And then you got Joe Biden, whose teeth came loose in a debate. His teeth literally came loose in one debate. He was trying to keep them in his mouth while he was answering a question about immigration. In another interview on CNN, he had an eye explode, blood vessels explode, and his eye was bleeding on TV. And then he came out and said he's going to put 720 million women back to work. We only have 120 million women. Where's he going to get another 600 million women, right? And life has got to suck for Joe Biden right now, right? Because you can't sniff women from 6 feet away. Nobody can do that, right?
Joe Biden definitely seems like the Democrats' robot that's falling apart, held together by bubble gum.
You get to a certain age and parts start falling off the animal. That's the way it is. And you got your winners and losers. You got Joe Biden that can't sniff women from 6 feet away, and then you got Arvin Bohr, who used to have to stay 1,000 feet away, and he's like, "Wow, 6 feet away from children, this is great." That's a big improvement for him. So you always got your winners and losers when the government exerts the iron fist, right? Yeah, that's right. So hey, we having a good time, everybody? Okay, I'll be here all weekend. I got 1 million of them. Yeah. So anyway, so I'm running for president. I'm calling myself the platform president. I read the Libertarian Party platform, and I think it's the most establishment document I've ever read. It's practically a rewrite of the Bill of Rights. It disagrees with the 16th Amendment, which makes the IRS possible. I agree with that. And but it embraces the First Amendment. It embraces the Second Amendment. It embraces the Fourth Amendment. It explicitly says the Constitution shall not be suspended even in wartime. I agree with that. So I'm trying to hold it together here. We have libertarians I'm running against for president who want to dissolve the United States. And ironically, Jacob and I probably agree on 98% of the world. It's just he's a lawyer, and lawyers are the establishment. Lawyers put me in a cage 30 years ago, so I have a visceral response to lawyers. I just can't help it.
So you can't suspend the Constitution in wartime or a virus that kills a few more people than the flu, right?
There really is no mechanism for that. I mean, when you look at what happens during these crises, right? So I believe if there was no government anywhere in the world, and we still had access to science and medicine and media, that a lot of us would just be doing what we're doing right now. We would not go out because we're fearful we may be asymptomatic. We don't want to make other people sick. We would do that just as moral people. But what we have now is we have situations where 80% of the small businesses in the United States are owned by a husband and wife or one or two people. And so, the governor comes along and he lies to you, right? He says to you, first of all, he claims to have the authority to make you close your business, which he doesn't. But he tells you got to close your restaurant, so you can't generate revenue. But then on the flip side, they don't suspend the laws that require you to comply with all the things that you normally do when you are making money. So obviously, bankruptcy is going to be through the roof. Unemployment is going to be through the roof. The government is lining the people's pockets with fake money. That's going to reset people's expectations that whenever there's it's going to be even worse. Like normal life is when there's a hurricane, people expect the fucking president to show up and give you a hug. Every time something goes wrong, people expect the president to show up. The president. Really? Right. Seriously? Not the mayor, not the governor, the president. And so now, we're conditioned to just turn to the government and just, okay, government, we got a problem here, solve it for us. This is not a good thing. It's the normalization that's going to come from this. These things hang around forever, these policies and these expectations. But we libertarians are keeping track. We're watching, and we'll have some strong arguments to make on the other side of this, because we're watching Republicans and Democrats say, well, we don't need certain laws. They're letting prisoners go. They're in San Diego here, where they would normally slap the cuffs on somebody. They're giving them a citation. So they're easing up on some laws. So you get to come back later on and say, well, if we didn't need them then, why do we need them now?
Right. Nick, did you have something you wanted to ask? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about, because there's certain states right now that aren't enacting any of the stay-at-home orders. Nebraska, Iowa as well. And I think especially Iowa, just because I've a lot of eyewitness accounts there, there's not a lot of people that are actually just staying at home just out of the goodness in their hearts. There's a lot of people that actually are just doing whatever, and they're based on Iowa's population, they've actually had a really, really large growth in the virus over the last couple weeks. Mm-hmm. Compared to some other states with the similar populations.
It's got to be that's got to be mostly in Des Moines. I mean, it's got to be 80% in Des Moines, right?
Yeah, Des Moines, Quad City area, and then Iowa City area. So the populated areas, but yeah.
So I was joking with Caleb earlier. I've been to Nebraska. What is there to shut down?
Omaha and Lincoln. That's
Omaha and Lincoln. I mean, it takes about 7 hours to drive east to west in Nebraska. Last time I did it, and you got to have Sirius, otherwise you can't get radio.
Right.
So some states like New York City, you got people stacked on top of each other, right?
Yes,
so that's obviously bad. It's bad to be in New York City. Out here in California, San Diego, and San Diego's the second largest city. Los Angeles is the largest, but both of our cities are spread out. They don't go up. They do not go up. We don't have a lot of high-rise buildings. San Diego is really a collection of villages. So it's nothing like New York or Chicago. San Francisco is like a miniature version of Chicago. There's only 500,000 people in San Francisco. People don't realize that. And there's a few skyscrapers and a few areas where it's condensed. But otherwise, California is really spread out. 80% of the people live within 25 miles of the water, and the other 20% that live inland, it's the Wild West there. And when you get north of San Francisco, it takes 15 hours to drive from the southern border where San Diego is to Oregon. And when you get to San Francisco, you're dead center in California. There's another 7-hour drive to Oregon, and it's all trees and mountains. It's like Nebraska with mountains and trees. There's nothing going on there. Yeah. So
it's a big, it's California is really just a big red state with a couple blue dots in it.
With really thick blue dots there. It's like a big drop of ink on the.
Yeah. The red is really red, and the blue is really blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a lot in the middle.
A state like Texas has done a pretty good job of like comparing it to like somewhere like California or like the really metro areas of East Coast and everything. Like a lot of the Texas major metropolitan areas have a pretty small percentage of the actual population. Right. I don't really know what our state is doing or what anybody's doing.
You're reopening everything next week.
Yeah, so the interior states are more protected. I mean, when people travel from Europe, they don't land in Texas, and when people travel from Asia, they don't land in Texas.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
They land in New York and they land in California, so the interior states, it's not as risky. But you know, when I took myself off the road about 4 or 5 weeks ago, it was literally my job to hang out at airports, get on airplanes, go to hotels, and make sure I shook every hand. That was literally my job. And so I was like, if I'm not radioactive, who is? I've got to be. You know? It's like.
So how would President Mark Whitney respond to the crisis that we're facing right now?
Well, I would just be honest with people. I think there is a role for government in providing guidance, but there's no role for chief executives in the Oval Office or in the governor's offices around the states to lie to people. So you have to be honest at the beginning and say, look, I don't have the authority here to tell you what to do. This is not a dictatorship. There's no mechanism in the Constitution for us to suspend the Constitution unless we have a constitutional convention and amend the Constitution. Since that hasn't happened, I don't have the authority to dictate here. I do have access to some pretty good doctors, some pretty good scientists. I do have this pulpit here, and here are some guidelines that you ought to consider following. The biggest reason is that a lot of people don't know they have this thing. A lot of athletes have been tested positive for this thing. They're in very good shape. They feel like they can play a 7-game series, but they test positive for corona. So, you know, just as moral people, as your president, I would suggest that you not hang out around other people for a while till we understand this. We don't even know if you can get it again. We haven't figured out whether it's more deadly than it is contagious or more contagious than it is deadly. We don't really know, but we do know that this is certainly different. It's something that we've never really seen before. So we all ought to be patient with each other for a while. That's the kind of guidance I would provide.
What do you think of the like Trump's government basically not funding the WHO anymore because of like what do you think of like do you because I know it's kind of
let's talk economics generally. The federal government in the last 30 days has increased the federal Congress together with the president have increased the federal budget by 50% in 30 days. Try to wrap your mind around that. $2 trillion, and they call it a spending bill. It's not a spending bill, it's a borrowing bill. So here are the numbers on that. The average age of Congress is 58. The average age of U.S. citizens is 38. The average age of death is 78. So when you divide $2 trillion by the number of adults in the United States, it comes out to $16,000 per adult. So the average American who's 38 is going to be paying interest on $16,000 for the next 40 years.
Yep.
So death by virus may seem reasonable by comparison.
Right.
You know, when you and they're talking about doing another $2 trillion.
Yeah, they're talking about a second round.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi wants $1 trillion. Trump is arguing for another $2 trillion. And Trump's organizations, his hotels and stuff, were exempt from the first round. And I'm thinking he's hoping they forget that in the second round, right? That's what I'm guessing.
Have you seen the one that Schumer proposed?
What did Schumer propose? I haven't seen that. Uncle Chuck. Amy Schumer's Uncle Chuck.
Yeah. It was called the Heroes Fund.
Yeah, they always give it a great name, right?
That's the thing where they're gonna they want to give bonuses to the people deemed as essential workers.
Yeah,
right
so
now,
the essential employees get a check for $25,000 each.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
You know what they're doing there? They're buying loyalty.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
buying loyalty with pretend money and putting it on the back of everybody else. So the Democrats rely on they rely largely on unions to survive. So this is just a play to that constituency, and so it's all politics. And at what point, you know, we were joking before the show, Caleb. Why not just give everybody $1 million? Why not just do that, right?
For sure.
So why don't we have a debate about why that's okay or not okay? So if you can just give people $25,000 in fake money, why can't you give them $1 million in fake money?
Well, now they don't even have to print it. They can just add a 0 on a calculator.
Yeah, they actually do print it though. They actually do physically print it and house it and warehouse it. They actually do print it. And they print the physical money, and it is there in the Federal Reserve lockbox. But what difference does it make? It doesn't. It's not. You know, I hope that the future is. I hope that Bitcoin becomes a world currency, and that we can all just trade freely around the world. And that it's possible that it could happen. That it's open source. That there are no Shylocks that get a piece of the transaction. You know, Mark Zuckerberg wants to have digital money so he can get a piece. But, you know, Bitcoin holds out the promise of a modern day gold standard where people are just trading. My son started a company when he was 18, invented an Xbox repair kit. And he partnered up with his friend Wilson in China, who he met on a video game. And Wilson hooked him up with engineers in Beijing, and they manufactured replacement parts for the Xbox that were better than what the Xbox had. And so it was all free trade. There were no accountants, no lawyers, no contracts. It was just trust. And it grew up to be a $15 million Amazon warehouse that he has. You know,
nice.
Cool.
That's fucking awesome. You guys keep talking. I really have to piss, but just keep rolling without me. I'll be right back.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It is pretty free roam.
Drank too much water.
Yeah, right.
So yeah.
So yeah, they you think the just like compared to history, I mean, it really kind of seems like you had said before, just nobody understands this thing. So we don't know what if, you know, no
it's a legitimate thing. I mean, there are some libertarians out there licking doorknobs trying to prove a point. And
yes.
I don't think that really helps anybody get elected.
No, not really.
You know, other people saying, you know, it's just, I really am here to try to make the party politically relevant. And it's a difficult thing because the culture, the comfort level for a lot of folks in the party is not winning. And if you talk about trying to actually win something, there's about a third of the people that get really upset with you. And it's like, no, dude, you can still have your philosophy, and you can still have your aspirations of no borders and no governments, and you can still talk about all that. But we all live in the real world, and the real world is with us on ending the trade war, ending the war on drugs, ending the war on terror. They're with us at a rate of about 75%. So why can't we? And they're also with us on don't spend a dollar you don't have. Well, 75% of the people go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other 25% are in government.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you say that too, because a lot of the other libertarian people that we've brought on, like that were running for office or anything, we asked them like, hey, why don't more libertarians go for like smaller government, like, you know, like Congress spots or like, you know, just a smaller type government, like mayors or something like that. And a lot of them will tell us, well, we don't expect to win. We're just out here to get a message out. And it's like, well, that doesn't.
Well, why can't you do both? Why can't you be, you know, like I can say that I support the idea of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 being repealed. I support the 16th Amendment being repealed. And I can say that I wish we lived in a world where there are no governments and no borders, and everyone was just nice to each other, and everyone had everything they needed to live a happy life. All those things are true, but there's also the political reality, and the political reality is that, especially since the events of September 11th, 2001, you know, this has become a really zero tolerance, iron-fisted, authoritarian country that we live in. One of my U.S. senators out here, Kamala Harris, you know, in a debate she was excoriating Elizabeth Warren because Elizabeth Warren wouldn't go along with her idea of having Jack Dorsey at Twitter censor the president of the United States off of Twitter. She wants to have Trump removed from Twitter, right? And mind you, she's running for president, right? So she's arguing that the person who holds the office she seeks, that the CEO of Twitter should be authorized to just completely make the president disappear. That's a little counterintuitive, but that shows you how, and she has a lot of support for arguments like that. There's a tremendous amount of tolerance for censorship of political speech, particularly among Democrats right now, because they know that Twitter and YouTube and Facebook and Google are controlled by people who are holed up in New York and LA and DC and the Silicon Valley. Well, what happens when Peter Thiel buys Twitter and he's running it? Now there's other people getting censored. So one of the, excuse me, let me just take a sip here.
Wuhan.
It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm not contagious. So hopefully some of these ideas will be contagious. So one of the things that got me off the couch was private sector censorship by robot. When I was doing my podcast Late Nite Last week, I'm flying high, criticizing the government on a high level. I turn around one day, almost 2 years ago, and Apple and Twitter and Facebook on the same day, and YouTube on the same day, took Alex Jones off their platforms. Yeah. And I'm not like a huge fan of Alex Jones, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But I've never really spent a lot of time listening to Alex Jones. But I know that Alex Jones never did anything that came close to violating his right to engage in free speech and criticize the government. He never came close, any more than Kathy Griffin came close when she held up an effigy of Trump's head in a photo, right? So I defend these people. I defend the principle of free speech. We are here today engaged in a collective act of citizen journalism. We have efficient access to platforms that allow anyone in the world to hear us. And governments around the world are very aware of that. The Republican and Democratic parties don't exist. They're completely fractured and broken up. The Democrats had to go full mobster to get a corporate candidate nominated this year. They had to really, whip everybody in line to get Biden in there, because Sanders was the one, who had the most votes consistent with his ideology, and all the corporate people were divided up among everybody else. So the Republican Party is the party of Trump. How can Rand Paul and Donald Trump be in the same party? How does that work? Yeah. How does Mike Pence, who is a dominionist and thinks he was here to have everybody in the world subscribe to his religion, how does a guy who doesn't support the First Amendment principles of separation of church from state from church rather, how is that guy vice president? So this is the world we live in. It's very disrupted. There's tremendous opportunities more than ever for libertarians to get smart politically and have an impact. And we have people that have unusual political opinions being censored from these platforms who are immune from being sued. They're immune from being sued because they bought a law fair and square that says you can't sue them. So what happens when we live in a world where the terms of service that we sign conflict with the terms of citizenship? When we sign up with Facebook and Twitter, we agree that they can remove us for any reason or no reason at all. We agree that if we don't like that, we have to do binding arbitration. We can't bring them into a public court where there's accountability. And then the Supreme Court recently ruled that if you sign an arbitration agreement, which is what we do when we sign up with these services, if you sign an arbitration agreement, you can't participate in a class action. So as someone that would like to see the Libertarian Party become a threat politically, I don't think we can live in this world. We're going to be reduced to putting 8.5 by 11 flyers on the community bulletin board, while people whose opinions are the same as Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity have unfettered access to the efficient, cost-free distribution these platforms offer.
Yeah, it seems like libertarians are almost at an impasse with that, because on one hand, they're censoring free speech, and there's been a lot of the people that worked back office in those companies that have admitted to it. But then also, it's like they're private companies, so I mean,
they are private companies, but libertarians oppose monopolies.
Yeah.
So the reason you can't sue these companies is because they are considered platforms. but Facebook regularly invokes the First Amendment when they defend themselves in federal court. So here's my deal. If you're going to carry political speech, you have to carry all political speech. You don't get to choose. Otherwise, don't carry political speech, YouTube. Just be a place where Aunt Becky's daughter is going to teach people how to put on makeup, and people are going to do drum solos or whatever they do. But if you're going to carry political speech, you got to carry it all, because that is a fundamental principle in our culture. And I don't care whether that principle is being violated by the new operating system, which is screens, right? This is how we operate now. The original operating system was paper. The Constitution was literally written with animal parts, rawhide and a feather. So we don't do that anymore. We operate with screens, and as citizens, we should all want to have equal access to these platforms, to especially for the purpose of criticizing our government.
Yeah, it seems like to me, just my thought. It seems like especially Google, because they have been shown to censor a lot on like YouTube and stuff, and even Twitter too. I think that they don't know that a lot of the stuff is being censored, to be honest, unless you're somebody like Alex Jones who really puts a big target on your head.
Right.
Other than that, I think just a lot of stuff just gets auto filtered out by them, and then
there's definitely shadow bans, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think on individuals that put a really big target on there, like Alex Jones, like. No, I'm not saying whether or not he deserved to be banned or anything. I personally don't think he did, but like when he's had a really big mouth, right? So he put a really big target on his head for these companies to censor him, because people were like the public, Joe Everyman was like, "Oh, censor this guy. He's an idiot." Like,
the problem is, and a lot of people saw that and they're like, "Oh fuck, I'm not Alex Jones. I don't care." I'm like, dude, you guys don't get it. To a lot of these people, anybody the right of Stalin is Alex Jones. You saw how they came after Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's a fucking hippie leftist.
Right.
Like, yeah. You get a guy like Philip DeFranco, just like automatically gets his YouTube's like his news videos just kicked off the front page and demonetized just from bots.
Right.
And it's like
so in the offline world, we don't have a test for these things. In the offline world, it's normal that everyone just gets to have their say. So when did it become normalized that we should have a test when it's online? We're the same U.S. citizens. We have the same rights, and if the principle, right, I ran into this problem in Florida where my speech was censored. And the point I was trying to make there in Florida is that if the principle of free speech, if that principle does not live within the hearts and minds of the people, then it doesn't exist on paper. There should be no test for what Alex Jones is saying with Kathy Griffin or Roseanne Barr or Kanye West or any of the people even more controversial. Every Supreme Court opinion that has upheld obnoxious speech, the plaintiff or defendant is an obnoxious person. Larry Flint, right, said something about Jerry Falwell's mother or something, and everyone lost their mind. So it's always going to be the Nazis. It's always going to be the people filled with hate. It's always going to be the people that are using the full force of speech who are in the crosshairs, and those are the people we need to defend, so that when we decide to try to use these tools to hold our government accountable, those tools are as strong as they can be. That's why we do it. It's not because, we want Alex Jones to be able to say Hillary Clinton is killing babies in a pizza shop or whatever it was he said. I don't know what you're talking about.
Ridiculous stuff.
I mean, anybody that listens to that is like, I remember when Kanye West, everyone was losing their shit when Kanye West said something about slavery that was obviously incorrect. And everyone came out of the woodwork to criticize him. And I was like, everybody knows that it's not true. Why do you? It's like nobody gives any credence to that.
Well, it's because everyone there's this mentality. You need people to know that you're on the other side of that bad thing.
It's almost like a religion, man. It's almost like a religion. Like people coming out and like publicly saying whatever to get like more brownie points in the organized religion that follows along this certain set of beliefs.
There's all sorts of virtue signaling, that goes on. And people are like, oh yes, I too am sad when somebody dies. Oh yes, I too am sad when somebody's sick. I too am virtuous. And those are people who are new to being public people. So, these social media platforms make
the
it easy.
checkmark mafia.
Yeah, they make it easy for anybody to be public. So everyone has to show how nice they are. But, Caleb, from doing stand-up that, you become good as a stand-up comedian when you stop caring about what people think, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
you can just go up on stage and you can be who you are. And whoever you are, the audience can feel that authenticity. And, this is one of the reasons Donald Trump is successful. Do we know anything more about Donald Trump, the president, than we knew about Donald Trump, the candidate, or Donald Trump, the public person before that? No, the guy is unchanged. He always shows up as Donald Trump. And compared to the normal politicians who pretend to be something they are not, that's why Donald Trump is able to have the following that he has, because people are like, yeah, he's fraudulent. Yeah, he's a pussy grabber, but he's our pussy grabber,
Exactly.
We know that this is what he does. He doesn't really make any bones about it. And so at least we know what we're getting with Donald Trump, which is a first for a federal politician.
That's kind of what I think is the superiority of like getting news sources and stuff from like YouTube or like Twitter or something, where you actually know who the person is that's doing it. Because at least if they're going to say an opinion piece about Donald Trump, or say an opinion piece about the Libertarian guys saying this, or Alex Jones, it's like, well, you at least can be like, well, I at least know that guy thinks that way, and I know he's not going to really diverge that far from it. Whereas like you get like these random news articles that people share on like Facebook or something like that, you don't even pay attention to the author. There's not even a picture of who the author is. So
Chad
it's like
Relic.
you get these Rolling Stone authors that are like, they've had 2 fucking pieces on the internet of like, I hate this and I hate this, and people just like take that for facts.
Right. Yeah, we live in a simulation. I mean, we live in a world now where major outlets like the New York Times and the Amazon Post and MSNBC and Fox and CNN, they have analytics now that tell them what people want to hear. So it's a business model to just continue that loop going on, right? It's like the recycling logo. And so they can watch those numbers and they go, Rachel Maddow goes, wow, people really get excited when I just go 100% against Donald Trump. So every night, that's what you have. There's no nuance there. It's just full commitment. And then Sean Hannity the other way. It doesn't matter what kind of crazy shit. Trump can talk shit about a gold star mother, and Sean Hannity is right there to say why that's the right thing to do, because he knows that's what his listeners want to hear. And so that makes citizen journalism that much more valuable, because, I don't track analytics when I get online and give an opinion, because I know the value of just being myself. I'm just out here trying to model intelligent citizenship for my sons. Basically, that's 90% of what I'm doing on a daily basis.
Well, that kind of stuff's got to be really, really frustrating for third-party guys too, when the analytics and everything. It's like, how can you get your word out there with that?
So one of the things I'm trying to teach libertarians is to stop using the phrase third party, because it sounds like third wheel. It sounds like you don't belong. And in a normal cycle, the Libertarian Party has 50 state ballot access for president. So as it applies to the office of the president, the United States is already a 3-party system. So I'm saying to people, look, pull on your big boy pants and act like you belong. That is the mindset you have to have. And at least for myself, I have to do everything that I can to win. I have to imagine myself on the debate stage. I have to imagine the legal arguments I'm going to make to get there. I have to imagine myself getting arrested 3 times if I don't get on the debate stage. I have to imagine myself becoming the president, so that on November 4th, if I'm not the president, I can live with myself. I know I did everything I could. I know I tried my best. It didn't land where I wanted it to land, but you get to fail better next time.
So that's the big question, is what does the Libertarian Party have to do? Because you had, in 2016, you had Gary Johnson. He was a governor. He got all the CNN, Fox News, MSNBC interviews you could think of. He was on Joe Rogan. He was on everything, and he still got like 3 or 4% of the vote.
And they like sabotaged him too. It's like
he sabotaged himself.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the really big outlet, or basically where he could get his face in front of a lot of people, like just tried to load questions on him. And
no, they did for sure.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of tracks you have to travel, I believe, as the Libertarian Party nominee. First, you have to try to win. So the pitch that I've been making is that story trumps stature. So I think Donald Trump proved, and I think the Democrats proved this year, that stature doesn't matter anymore. Who's got the best story? Donald Trump was great on his feet. He's great on stage. I have a great libertarian story of a guy that lost everything in his 20s, got banished to prison, litigated his way out as a high school graduate, and for the past 20 years, lawyers have been paying me. I mean, how great is that? And we're a libertarian family. We're all from the private sector. I've succeeded performing in theaters and talking to Democrat and Republican audiences and getting them to stand on their feet and cheer for my libertarian life story. I think the lesson of Mike Bloomberg, who spent $500 million, $500 million to get 8 delegates, is that advertising doesn't work. I could be the nominee and I could get on Kimmel and do 5 minutes of killer Chappelle level stand-up and get on all the other late night shows, maybe get to host SNL. I heard that Gary Johnson was invited to host SNL and turned it down.
Seriously?
I heard that.
Even
I heard
Trump
that from
did
a
like
reliable
that thing.
source. But let's say $100 million came in, right? That would be a lot of money. And I think that money should be used to recruit and train activists and candidates so that we have outstanding candidates running for the federal legislature and for governorships. That's how you grow a party. I mean, for the Libertarian Party, every 4 years, the presidential thing is really a very well orchestrated publicity stunt. And for the last 3 election cycles, they've nominated certified pre-owned Republicans. I don't think that helps build the Libertarian brand. I get why they did it, because you have to have a candidate who's not. The standard has kind of been, we need someone that's not going to embarrass us. That's kind of been the standard. I think I meet that standard. I think I meet the low standard that I won't embarrass you.
You don't wear a boot on your head.
Well, the boot thing is interesting. Berman is internet famous, and the boot is a great metaphor for the weight of government. And I've seen down in Florida, they had a stand-up comedy night the night before the convention, and I watched Berman perform, and he's one of the freest performers on stage I've ever seen. He's kind of a lot of fun to watch. But the fact of the matter is, the word vermin is a category of rodents.
Right.
It includes mice and rats and ferrets and all kinds of things that scare the shit out of women in particular. So I mean, the question, I think, for delegates is the day after the convention, what is the major media going to see? And I can tell you that this face right here, which ought to be carved in Mount Rushmore, I don't care who you are, but when we boost my libertarian post to Trump supporters, all they see is this face, and they are triggered because they're like, wow, that guy looks like a president. And then they go, where's he from? And then someone says California, and then someone else goes, oh, I bet he's got Nancy Pelosi in his speed dial, and it just kind of goes downhill from there. But the first impression is so important. So I think that, and the other thing about Berman's interesting, he always gets the biggest laughs. And it seems like, I think, and Caleb, as a comedian, when you get a big laugh, it's very satisfying. But when you're running for president, you have to do more than get a laugh. You have to pivot and have something important to say about the questions being presented. And Berman doesn't do that. He makes a great satirical point, gets a great satirical laugh in responding to questions. But then he doesn't pivot and talk about the real world in a serious way. If he did that, I think that it would be very hard for people to marginalize him.
See, I've talked to Vermin face to face too, like in person,
Right.
a couple of years ago, and he really is. He's not, the crazy homeless guy that he looks like. Like, he's a very intelligent guy. You can have a serious conversation with him.
Yes.
He's just an entertainer.
Yeah, and he's a very good entertainer, and there is a large entertainment component to being a presidential nominee. It's a unique office. Like, if you're running for Congress or for Senate, the job is literally sitting on committees. That's the job. Right. You're one of many. But president is like a weird ass job these days. The lights are on 24/7. Trump is doing 2 or 3 hours a day. You can't do his rallies anymore. So he does.
He's got to actually do his job. It's crazy.
He does his rallies in the press room every afternoon, and he controls the narrative that way. You know, he's found a way to make this thing work for him.
How would you keep up with a job that's just 24/7 like that? Because we know Trump does Adderall to do it, so it's like.
Well, you know, I think there are two parts of the job. There's the part that you have to do, and the part that is discretionary. And I'm most excited about the discretionary part. I mean, I love the idea as president of going out to talk to a different high school every 2 weeks, a civics class, a 9th grade civics class, about, you know, the importance of the fundamental principles that, you know, allow us to be sitting here and doing what we're doing here today.
Right.
And I love the idea of going out and talking to law schools. I love the idea of using that pulpit to be the best civics teacher the country's ever had. I've also promised that as president, every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, I will come out and stand on the podium there in front of the White House and deliver joke of the week. That is something I promised to do. And I don't care if bodies are floating in the river and missiles are coming in. Every Saturday at 8 o'clock is joke of the week, right? Yeah. And
Biden would do that without even trying. He just
yeah. All he has to do is stand there. He doesn't have to do anything. He just take his teeth out and put them back in, and then go back in the White House.
Have you? Oh, go ahead.
So then there's the stuff that Republican Democratic presidents do, which Libertarian presidents aren't going to do, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to attack countries that have never attacked us. That's never, ever, ever going to do that. That's never going to happen. I've said that as president, I'll sign the Rome Statute so that the United States is party to the International Criminal Court, and you'll see these aggressive wars immediately stop. One of the things the Libertarian Party has in common with international law, by the way, you can put on an index card. It's about 4 principles, and the most important principle is the principle of non-aggression. That is the fundamental principle of international law: is do not start it. Do not be the one to start the fight. And that is fundamental to being a libertarian. You have to take an oath of non-aggression. And so, you know, it all goes very hand in glove. But a libertarian president would be doing a lot less. A libertarian president would reject the authority that Democrats and Republicans have delegated to him from Congress, so they don't have to make political decisions. But one of the things I would do is embrace the authority that the people have given to the president, the unreviewable, uncheckable authority to declassify state secrets. And I would use that brickbat as a way to get Congress to play ball. You think about all the unconstitutional shit we know that they do. Can you imagine the stuff that we don't know? You know, years ago, Nixon's iconic Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, and I know this for a fact because Julian Assange years ago dropped a tranche of documents on Wikipedia, and there was a cable in there, a transcript of the speech Kissinger gave to a bunch of his fellow diplomats, and he was bragging. He says, "The illegal we do right away, the unconstitutional takes a little more time." Yeah, that's the government as I understand it. And mind you, he's boasting. So the threat of uncovering and divulging state secrets, you know, if my team can find out that Mitch McConnell's got something going on with an 8-year-old girl, that he's Arvin Bohra in disguise, well, we can get some shit done, don't you think?
Do you really? So we've had Arvin on here before.
Arvin, I would think, would laugh at like those jokes. He seems like a pretty non-serious guy.
Yeah, Arvin and I had a very civil 1.5 hour debate/conversation. It's on the internet. He's a very smart guy. He's Ivy League, and it's an intellectual challenge to debate him. It probably might be the best conversation between two libertarians of the campaign season. My debate with Dan Taxation is Theft was a very good debate one-on-one, but the conversation with Arvin was really interesting. I mean, you got a guy who's a hardcore anarchist, and then you got me who shares the sentiment but is still trying to operate here in the real world. So it was a good conversation.
Do you think he's actually a pedophile?
I don't know, man. I've got a treasure trove of shit that he's posted about, and I don't know. Why if you're trying to be a politician, do you come out against statutory rape laws? That allows somebody to say you're in favor of well, I mean, that allows you to.
He just says everything all the other senators and stuff are thinking.
Well, the other senators are probably doing it.
Yeah.
That's my hope as president, of finding those stories, you know. No, they actually have the system in place in Congress, by the way. So in the private sector, right, when Matt Lauer plays grab ass down at the office, he has to write a big check to somebody and he loses his job. The way it works in the federal legislature is that if Mitch McConnell plays grab ass and the person files a complaint, the woman in his office files a complaint, she is put on leave and she gets paid all of her money. And then they give her a choice. They say, you can sign this non-disclosure agreement and we'll give you a fat check, which, by the way, is funded by taxpayer money, or you can go ahead and take your chances in court. So they literally, the federal legislatures literally issued themselves a license to sexually harass women and to have it covered by taxpayers. That is the system that exists right now in Congress.
What do you think about the insider trading stuff that went on right before the virus, when it came out that like 5 or 6 senators dumped their stocks?
That has long been the number one reason to get elected to the federal legislature. My congressman is a guy named Scott Peters. Scott Peters lives in La Jolla, California, just down the road from me. He's worth $100 million. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that Scott Peters wants to be a congressman is because he knows the legislation that's coming, so he can bet for or against that stock before that legislation passes. And that has been a thing for a long time. Yeah. And they have all sorts of special rules they've made for themselves. And it's a lifestyle choice to dig into these rules and bring them out and understand them. I mean, you can make an entire career out of it and not keep track of it all. It's unbelievable.
There's a little story about, I believe it was the mayor of El Paso here. Back like 20 years ago, the city here actually passed legislation that none of the housing residential area can have wooden fencing. It's all got the like stone concrete type fencing walls. Yeah. So like the year after that had passed, or like the month after, or something like that, the mayor like sunk a ton of money into this one company that now does all the walls and all. So
he had an interest in the stone business,
basically.
Yeah. You see that stuff all the time. It's I have no interest in doing any of that stuff. These people are so weak that do that. When a lawyer pays me $500 to use my software for a year, I'm excited because I got that on the merits. It doesn't excite me to. When I first started my company, a guy came out from a big firm in D.C., Patton Boggs, which is a big lobbying firm. He brought me down to lunch at the Bay here in San Diego and looking at all the yachts. And he says to me, well, how would you like to have one of those yachts someday? I'm like, I don't really give a crap about a yacht. But he said, well, I could get a law passed for you that requires the government to buy your software. And I said, I'm not interested, dude. I'm not interested. I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in private sector venture capital. I just want to have a nice little family business that lasts a long time. I was real clear on that. And when you do something on the merits, it's 100% yours to be proud of, right? I don't understand people who want to cheat.
I love it. You're like the perfect amount of wholesome and vulgar.
Yeah, right.
Now you're trying to seduce me.
He's like the dad that sits you down at the kitchen table and he did something bad and just starts swearing a storm at you, but deep down you deserved it. You're like,
but deep down he's cursing you out for your own good.
Yeah, you're like, he's right.
Yeah. You're no longer my little piece of shit.
He called me a motherfucker, and I know I deserved it.
You called him a mother Jacober. That's
Mother Jacober.
So we've done about an hour, Mark. Do you have anything you want to plug real quick?
MarkWhitney.com is the domain. MarkWhitney.com. Most of the drama in the Libertarian Party presidential debate plays out on Facebook. Anybody listen to this, thanks for listening. I mean, I know you're probably fighting poverty and economic devastation and everything else. And hopefully we give you a little hope that there might be better days ahead if we can live in a more free society and be nicer to each other and not be bombing the crap out of each other. And that's the kind of world I want to live in. So thanks for listening, folks. And thank you, Caleb and Nick.
Thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
You guys out there have nothing but time right now. Go listen to Mark and Arvin have their talk.
There's another very good use of your time. If you go to markwhitney.com and click on memoir, I have an award-winning show I toured for several years there. You can watch for free. You don't need to give me your email address. It's called Fool for a Client, and it's about that one time 30 years ago when I defended myself facing 225 years in federal prison. How about that? Dang. And obviously it didn't work out the way they wanted, because here I am. It's a great story. It got me on the cover of Story magazine with Drew Carey and Russell Brand. It's worth your time.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to check that out. That actually sounds interesting as fuck.
It does.
It really is. It really is. Yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, we are going to peace out here. Make sure you check on your friends if you haven't heard from people kind of getting fucked up from this quarantine stuff. So,
right on.
Bye, guys.
Yeah. So deuces. Feels good to be back, guys.
Good.